Clay, I just want to talk about this episode of Star Trek Picard called Assimilated. I don't want to talk about how it felt to watch you die.
Well, at least for once on a new Star Trek show, people are choosing not to talk about their feelings, I guess. When she said that, I was like, oh, thank God. I guess we could just skip right past that part.
When did she die? That's my question. I'm going to have a lot of questions in this episode about, Clay, when did this happen previously that I don't remember when all this stuff happened? I might just be blocking it out or something, or I have like mental blocks in the way. Did they mean when she became a Borg queen? I wasn't exactly sure what they're referencing. Did it happen this season when she died? When did she die?
It was Raffi talking to Seven?
Yeah.
Was she talking about her? I thought she was talking about Elnor dying.
She says, "Watch you die," though. I think I quoted. I wrote it down that way. At least Elnor would make more sense. But is she talking about it in the third person? This is not a good start for our podcast about this. But I was so confused by that line.
Welcome to Pensky podcast. We've got no idea what happened in this one.
I was very confused about that. Anyway, this is Assimilation. It's the third episode of Star Trek Picard's second season. It came out on March 17th, 2022. Written by Kylie Rossiter and Christopher Monfett. Directed by Leah Thompson. In-universe date, the alternate timeline is 2401. It's also 2024. In this episode, Picard and the crew travel back to 2024 Los Angeles in search of the Watcher, who can help them identify the point at which time diverged. Seven, Raffi, and Rios venture out into an unfamiliar world 400 years in the past, while Picard and Jurati attempt to gather information from an unlikely and dangerous ally. Here with the third episode of Star Trek Picard. Yeah, so again, thank you, patrons, for supporting the show and listening. It's been great. Everything's going well on the Patreon. Here we go with Star Trek Picard. I have very broad opinions about this one, like not really specific to this episode. I don't know if you have specific thoughts about this one or if you wanted to start off with like a 10,000-foot view of things, but it's your choice. You decide.
My 10,000-foot view of this one is, well, first of all, thank God they didn't spend any more time in the future, because I thought they were going to have to do that again. But I feel like this has been 3 episodes of starting the story.
Yeah.
And for a season that's what, 10 episodes?
10 episodes. We're almost halfway there.
Yeah, we're a third of the way in or whatnot, and things really haven't got, like, I'm still not even sure what the story is to a certain extent. And so I find that to be frustrating. And this is another episode where the characters are transported somewhere separately and have to find each other again. It's the third episode in a row where they've done that. And it's just,
that's kind of similar to my 10,000. My 10,000-foot take on all of this is that these new modern Trek series are like so ADD in what's going on. It's like it's weird where we are right now, where you're saying there's not really a story started. I finished watching this and then I kind of reviewed what had happened, and I'm like already kind of forgetting stuff that has happened that has brought them to this point. Like, you know, when Q shows up, I'm always like, "Oh, right, Q." Like, what the hell has he been? It's really scattershot and just so get to the next point, and I just don't see any coherence. Like, they didn't pay much attention to the totalitarian nightmare. There's not much paid attention to Q. I feel like people are a little bit concerned that there's going to be sort of a like political angle on this in the future, because they land in 2024 where, to the horror of the writers, like the Republicans and Trump have seemed to have won in 2024. So, like, you know, everything's gone to shit or something like that. But I don't think they're actually going to focus on the politics. I think they just chose random things to look at, and they're not going to actually delve into any of those things. Would you agree? Or do you think that that's actually going to be a topic that the show talks about?
I think they're going to pay that stuff lip service, like
what they did here.
Yeah, you don't have Rios get arrested by ICE at the end of the episode and and without that being a purposeful move. But I also don't think that's the rest of the season is going to be Rios working as a coyote to get people across the border or something. You know what I mean?
He's going to stay in the past.
Yeah, I think they're going to use it in the way where it's like they picked something that sucks and is awful that is happening now, and they put it in the context of the show, and someone's going to say, wow, this sucks. Basically, it's just a bunch of scenes that are kind of echoing the thing that Seven and Raffi said in the tent city there, where it's like, yeah, you'd think they'd have been more enlightened by now. It kind of sucks that they're not. And then Raffi's like, yeah, I can't believe that the civilization lasted this long. It's like, I feel like it's going to be a lot of that.
Yes. Sort of bad takes on current events, kind of like a one sentence bad take on current events is my take. Like it's annoying to me because it's like, it's all of these super complicated issues that the show is just going to sort of lip service to, like, well, this is a damn shame. It's like, yeah, well, like the fire stuff, it's not just, it's like, there's so many things that go into those fires out there. It's like, they don't get rid of the shit, the undergrowth and everything, because people live there and the billionaires don't want to pay to have this kind of dangerous thing. When the things catch on fire, it's bad. It's like,
not enough people sweeping the floors out in the forest.
Right, exactly. Like not enough chipmunk hunters out there or something, just like rounding up. But it's like, it's not just, the simplistic take of like bad things kind of happen. It's like, everything's complicated that they bring up, even ICE. It's like, it's there's a way to treat people humanely, but at the same time, there is such a thing as like illegal immigration. For like, not all immigration is legal. So it's like, there's this, I don't know, it's complicated. But I don't think I'm going to get too wound up on it because, as you're saying, I don't think they're actually going to talk about it. I think they're just using it as a backdrop.
The thing I'm curious about, and one of the reasons why this frustrates me from a Star Trek point of view, is I wish they hadn't picked 2024. I wish they had picked like 2050 or something that would allow them to do something a bit more speculative with it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's for the better that they didn't. Cause
it's weird that they went ahead a couple years at all. Why not just say this is 2022?
Right. Yeah. Like, it's 2 years from now, and it's like they're not making enough substantial changes to anything to really make it that interesting from a science fiction standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, maybe they will. And maybe the thing is like, little do we know that in 2024, there's a Soong out there who's perfecting technology or AI technology that's going to step out of the Alexas in our houses and into the starships of the future.
I thought they were going to put the ICE captives into torture chambers from the Mirror Universe or something. Just
the agony booth.
The agony booth.
Yeah, it's a tough call, I guess, because on the one hand, I kind of wish they had gone sort of the Deep Space Nine route, where they picked a point in the future from the present of when the show is being broadcast, so you could kind of do something more speculative. But at the same time, I don't trust these new shows to do something speculative within the same century as us, and not just be the worst version of people are just causing wildfires. The thing that they did with just the general totalitarian government of the Confederation, like, it's not like they're going to be more subtle than that if they jumped 50 years in the future.
No,
from now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I that's why I find all of this a little bit narratively confusing, because normally that's what you would kind of do, is you pick a point that you go back to that allows you to be speculative in a way that you can kind of make the theme and the thesis of the story you're trying to tell. But they've tried to do that like twice.
Yeah, they've jumped twice is the strange part here. They jumped to a bad past, and then they jumped to a semi-speculative past. Like, not, it's a weird, it's like if they went 2050, like you're saying, that's a weird speculative halfway point to get to in the story, as opposed to just calling this modern day, which they do. It is strange. It comes back to the point we were talking about in the early episode. It's like there's just a lot of jumping going on here. Alternate universe back in time, and all of them have to reflect something. And I think it's getting a little bit muddled about where you're supposed to land.
And it's for these kind of stories, it is a little bit confusing to have an alternate present that then you have to go back in time before the present is changed. So technically it's the same timeline, but also it's a different time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you've established well what's going on, like in Back to the Future 2, it gets a little bit tricky to be like, no, the present you were in no longer exists because the present is now different because of the actions of the past, which you have to go back and change before the actions happen in order to save the present, which is the one you remember. No. It's like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I was only, to come back to like all the things that I've forgotten, I was only reminded that there's a time schism when the Borg Queen mentions it. And he's like, you're very, very lucid now. And she's like, well, we're before the point in time where the universe splits. And it's like, my God, there's a lot of stuff that I need to track to really understand what the hell's going on here.
I thought that was interesting, because, yeah, fine, sure, it makes sense. But at the other point, I was like, so does that mean if you subscribe to like the multiverse theory, there are countless numbers of timelines where the Borg Queen is constantly on the fritz?
Yes. And
that's fun.
And that Q exists in all timelines and universes as the same person.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're asking questions the show is not asking, so we probably shouldn't spend time on that stuff. But.
No. But that's really my main takeaway. Like, I thought this episode was okay, really. Like, I enjoyed it while it was happening. I think I enjoyed the stuff actually when they get to LA a little bit more than the opening, just because it's nice to have like bright light occasionally in the show.
Well, it's nice to have bright light. And also, again, like the show starts with Picard just hanging out while his buddies fucking murder 5 people. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. It's just, I'm very confused at the recklessness with which they take life in this, seemingly banking on the fact that it won't matter because they fixed the timeline.
Well, they took a lot of life in the first season too, didn't they? A lot of people were dying, and that timeline didn't get rectified.
But, you know, they're all Starfleet people now. You'd think they would have a little bit more restraint, but no. I mean, Seven and Raffi are just blasting people away at full capacity.
So I guess this is a good entry point. What's your, like, did this episode change the way that you think the show views Picard? Because it has one sequence in it that I thought was really strange, which is when Raffi starts going insane for what I can understand is no conceivable reason besides Elnor died. And this is another thing where it's like, when did Raffi and Elnor become best friends? I don't remember if I missed something there, but apparently they did. And Raffi says to Picard, this is all because you and your buddy Q are traipsing around fucking with people's lives. And Picard goes, I don't do it, but Q does. He sort of sells out Q in this weird way. And I thought it was, I mean,
if there's anybody that deserves to be sold out, it's Q, let's be honest.
Well, I feel that, like, I don't know if it's a better understanding of the character, but like, to me, it feels like a weird take on Q, because at the end of TNG, I think it's difficult to walk away and not say that Q is a kind of trickster moral teacher, right? Like he's a trickster god, but he does show Picard a better side of himself throughout his experience with him.
Yeah.
And for Raffi's take to be that, and then, like, it's fine for Raffi to be wrong because she doesn't know it, but I would expect Picard to kind of chime in and be like, actually, he is annoying and dangerous, but he's shown me things that I wouldn't have realized otherwise. And
yeah,
but he doesn't do that. He's just like, yeah, he's a real jackass. Look at what he does.
Yeah. I mean, you're also talk about things kind of forgetting that things are happening. That would have been a great point for him to say what you said and then follow that up with, and also, this is not like him. There's something wrong with him.
Yeah.
Because that's something they establish in episode 2, which they don't even like pay lip service to in this one. Like, it's not even part of the story at this point.
Yeah. And
like, that would have been I think that would have been a nice moment for Picard to kind of express that a bit.
Yeah, he doesn't,
but yeah,
he like, I'm still curious about what they think, how much of Picard and Stewart's performance is intentional because of his age, and or written intentionally, and how much it is because of his age at this point that this is not being effective. I just feel he's extremely feeble in both like outlook on life and performance here.
Yeah.
To the point where in this episode where people go off and do action adventures, he has this sort of C- of a plot line where he's with the Borg cube and Agnes on the ship. And I don't know. I don't know where they're choosing to draw that line about whether or not he actually believes in things anymore, or if he's just this like, he just seems kind of pathetic to me in this point. Like he's sad about Elnor. A lot of people have died. We can be sad that Elnor's dead for now or whatever, but like Picard's been a captain who's seen thousands of people die. And so, like he doesn't bring his past experience into any of these situations in a way that I think is believable for him.
Yeah, and I forget every episode how old he feels, which is why I wish they would stop showing the same clip at the beginning, because the clip where he calls for the ship to self-destruct, he sounds like someone's grandfather who's about to die. He's like, computer.
Calling for the nurse call button.
Yeah, self-destruct sequence activated. And it's like, this isn't really working for me. You're really reminding me that his best days might be behind him at this point. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with him, because like the stuff with Agnes and the Borg Queen, right? Think back to the scene with what's her name from First Contact? The
Borg Queen?
The Earth woman. I can't remember her name or the actress name.
It's like a male name, isn't it? I forget the black woman you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, the scene in Picard's ready room where she's trying to get him to blow up the ship, and he's got these
blow up the damn ship.
Yeah. No. He's got like a really strong point of view that is informed by his previous experience with the Borg, and he knows how dangerous they are, and they've fucked him up to the point where he is gonna go beyond the pale in order to do stuff, even when he knows it's not the right thing to do ultimately. And then here, Agnes Jurati talks him into letting her kind of let herself be assimilated by the Borg Queen.
Yeah. Hey, her sadness is going to remain in somewhere else, and so it's not a complete assimilation or something.
Yeah, and like I was watching the scene, like the idea I kind of was into. I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Like as a concept, I don't mind the idea of, okay, the Borg Queen is debilitated. Maybe there's a way we can kind of like hack into her a bit by giving her the carrot on the stick of assimilating somebody. Okay, interesting. But like Picard does not put up the kind of fight in that situation that I think he should. Like being turned into Locutus, for better or worse at this point, is like the defining thing that happened to him in his character
defining
history.
Trauma that's happened to him.
Yeah, his defining trauma that in the last season he's dealt with to a certain point where he's working with people who are being deborgified, which is a really interesting thing to do. But he still has an innate fear and distrust of the Borg, et cetera, et cetera. This season, he's just like Borg amnesty, baby. It's and this scene where they're doing this and she's talking about this. I would assume that under no circumstances would Picard let somebody do this.
And I would 100% agree, which is why I was kind of relieved and thought it was a good moment where the opening scene that they talk about it, he says no way and it cuts. And I was like, oh, the crew are actually going to have difference of opinion here where Agnes is going to do this on her own and he's not willing to do it. But she convinces him in the second scene that it's a thing to do. And it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why you would undercut him that way. Just have her do it without his knowledge, Yeah,
I mean, that's so much more interesting, isn't it? Like, because she's, especially for a character like her who's looking for a way to help and be part of the team and stuff like that, who's lonely and blah, 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 blah. And she has been known, her character from last season is the kind of scientist who is going to push the envelope, right? So why wouldn't she just do it without his knowledge?
Right.
And then have to deal with the consequences of that instead of playing it out this way where he's like, okay, sure, I'll be your guide while you do this acid trip and make sure that you're okay. And then it just kind of works and it's fine, at least for now. But,
yes. Yeah.
There's not a ton of, it feels like a bit of a character failing as far as Picard goes, that he is so quickly convinced that this is the only way to do things.
He's extremely passive. I would say in addition to it not seeming like his character makes sense there and that he should be extremely anti this idea to the point where he's yelling and smashing things a la First Contact and screaming no and stuff. I think something that the show and this series and some of them in Discovery to an extent do as well is that I understand conceptually this moment of hacking into the Borg Queen. I understand the risk involved. I understand that there can be a great payoff to doing that. I understand that one character probably would want to do it and Picard would not want that to happen. The problem that these shows consistently have is that it never feels like they effectively build the stakes or convince you that this is going to be a dangerous thing that is worth the risk if it pays out that way. And because they bring up the topic and two characters talk about it for like 15 seconds and then they start doing it. And there's no sense that Agnes is basically risking her life. They portray it as just kind of this idea that she wants to do, and Picard is mildly not into it at all. And it's such a it's the build up in the first season to Seven joining the Borg cube. And in my mind's eye, I still go back and I think of how the series could have built to that, where this is like her greatest sacrifice is to become the Borg Queen, which reactivates this cube and saves them because the Borg all reactivate, but it loses her in the process. And they just don't do it. It's just, it's all this nonsense build-up idea that happens so quickly. When it's over, you're shocked that that's all they were going to do with it at all. It's such a letdown.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that's different here with that is we are at the beginning of whatever's going on with the Borg Queen and Agnes.
Yes.
Could
be a stepping stone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still interested to see what goes on there. I actually really liked that scene when they patched her in. I do think again, you unfortunately, I don't know if this is on Patrick Stewart or if this is on the writing, but like when they're going back and forth, like the throwing the voices back and forth was very fun. But I never got the sense from Picard, like I couldn't see the stress on his face at all.
Yeah.
Because you've got the Borg Queen who's talking very expressionlessly, and the same with Agnes. And also Picard is there, and he's not really playing much of it. So they just keep cutting to this like iPad with a EKG on it or some shit.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. I think it's speaking to the stakes that you're talking about, where it's like they're not really leaning into the drama of this stuff as much as they could be.
I find they undercut it. There's two examples. The only one I can think of is the Agnes one. There's two examples, and maybe I'll remember the other one, where they take something serious and then undercut it with a joke, interestingly. So the Agnes one is once she starts connecting and being assimilated by the Borg Queen, she starts insulting Picard, basically. And I'm like, oh, it's like true feelings coming out, but they undercut it by going, oh, never mind, I'll shut that door and I'll go in this door. And they play it as kind of a comedy thing, but I think there's room there for either the Borg Queen or Agnes's true feelings to come out and affect Picard, but it doesn't because it's a joke at that point.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that scene in and of itself could have been like a classic Star Trek scene if they got into some of that stuff, but they didn't.
Yeah.
But the idea I think is fun. I actually thought the direction was pretty good in this episode. I didn't know Leah Thompson was a director.
Yes, yeah, apparently does TV now.
Yeah, the only thing that I had an issue with, and I don't know if this is on the directing end or if it's just on script or what. Where do they land?
Unclear. They land at home, which is apparently not France. I don't know. I don't know where they go.
I don't know. That was a little unclear. I don't know if it really matters. But aside from that, I thought the episode looked good. I thought that scene with, like I said, I thought that scene with the Borg Queen and Agnes and Picard was shot very well.
What do you think of the Borg Queen? Do you like her?
I actually do. I like her because I like those types of characters. I wish I had a little bit more of an idea of what her angle is.
Yeah.
But I think the performance is pretty good. But I do wish they had gotten Alice Krige to do it
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it seems like it's a pretty physical performance, and she's, I think, like in her 70s or something. So maybe it didn't fit her anymore.
I like this stuff with the Borg Queen crawling around is creepy.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
That's good.
She's going to get a full body, right? Like, I feel like I'm going to be right.
She asks for legs. Yeah, she asks for legs in this one. So
I feel like I'm going to be right. At some point, not only is she going to get a full body, but she's going to somehow end up looking normal, I think.
I think that the Borg Queen is 90% good and there's 10% strangeness to it, where I think they try to make her funny sometimes. And I don't know why you want to do that. The Borg are just not funny. And it takes away her threat when she doesn't crack jokes, but she has like turns of phrase that are meant to be kind of humorous to Picard and things like that. And I don't really care for that. But I think it's a fine idea to have her. I'm a little bit. She's another aspect of a lot of the parts of the show where I'm sort of hazy about what her role is here, besides just being a time travel battery for them.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll go into something like that. My tangentially off of that, my awkward science moment, or like you're too nerdy about Star Trek, is when the time travel thing to go back in time is they warp around the star, but it looks like they're going 10 miles an hour when they do it. So they're supposed to be going incredibly fast, but they have time to sort of skirt the star's corona or whatever you call it, and it's one of those silly things about warp speed is supposed to be much faster than that, but who cares?
Well, yeah. That whole time travel mechanic, it's a real interesting choice for Star Trek, because Star Trek, and I've always thought even Star Trek 4, I think it's a fairly clunky mechanic, but because Star Trek is usually so steeped in, at the very least, like a glimmer of plausibility, and this is just, how do you control where you go? Right.
Well, yeah.
Like if you,
the Queen,
do you have to count? Does every time you go around the sun, is that like 100 years or something? Like, how do you just think about it? If everybody on the ship thinks about it really hard, they'll end up in 2024.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you target anything?
I don't know. That's a good question. There is no precision with that, or accuracy, or whichever.
At least in Star Trek 2009, they both ended up in completely different time periods.
Right.
So this is like, I know they're using a method that was used previously in the franchise, but it's a very clunky mechanic for a show like this.
So what'd you think of our time in sunny LA, which opens with every bit of royalty-free drone cinema you can get, and then some music is put on top of it. I liked this section of it. It's a little weird for these characters to be in this time, I think. Honestly, the issues they chose to focus on were a little bit of a distraction to me. I think Rios actually comes out fairly well out of this one. I liked his plot. That doctor is a bizarre television creation that can't possibly exist in real life, but she's good. Losing the badge.
You've never run into any under the table medical clinics run by hot single moms?
No. Who hot single moms who run free clinics for the people who can't afford it, obviously, and are helping the downtrodden. I generally don't think that those doctors go in that direction. What was I going to say about Rios? Really, like the strangest thing about the Rios thing is that I know they mention it, but him just getting beamed like 40 feet into the air, and that's how he ends up where he is, was a strange decision. I feel like that's handled by he walks into traffic in any other show.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I like the Rios stuff.
Best joke is when she gets him to tell the story and then just sets the bone on him. I thought that was legitimately funny. Yeah. Yeah,
that was good. I actually had a doctor do that to me recently. Not to that extent, but I went in and went to see my cardiologist, and he was taking my blood pressure. My blood pressure was high. And so he's like, he had me lay down, and I was wearing a Space Mountain t-shirt. And so he's got the thing back on my arm, and he's like, Space Mountain, that's from Disney, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, did you go recently? And I start telling him about my Disney trip. And then after about halfway through, I realized what he was doing. And he's like, oh, he's taking my mind off of the fact that he's taking my blood pressure to try to relax me, to get my blood pressure to go down. It seemed to work too. So what I'm saying is, in that moment, this show is medically accurate.
That's correct. That's the most realistic moment in Star Trek history.
Yes. I like the Rios stuff. My issue with this entire plot idea of sending them back to 2024 is, like, obviously the first thing people are going to think of is Voyage Home, right?
Yes.
I think, and I mean, however many of the other times that they've sent them back, City on the Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, I think of Carpenter Street from Enterprise, where they go back to Detroit. Yeah.
Well, but my point is, Carpenter Street, I guess that kind of will fall under what I'm going to say next. But the reason I'm worried about this plot line is because the characters are too cool. And the reason that Star Trek 4 works is because part of the thing that makes it fun to watch is that they are so fish out of water and so fucking weird characters when you really take a step back and look at them.
Yeah.
That it creates a really interesting dynamic of being a fish out of water who is also just, it's tough for them to fit in because they're weirdos.
Yeah. That's why it's the best Trek comedy.
Yeah. Everybody in this show is just too cool. Like, they show up in LA and they're
black
automatically
leather,
like black leather,
tight
grabbing
pants,
guns, and doing that thing everybody seems to know how to do in shows, where they just like they just slide on the gun backwards and take the gun apart. I don't know. How does that work? Someone please tell us how that works, because everybody seems to know how to do that in shows, and I don't know how that works.
No,
but you know what I mean? Like the scene where Raffi and Seven are trying to get up to the top of the building, and the guard comes over and starts talking to them. In Star Trek 4, I feel like that same scene is a lot more satisfying because it's weirder.
Yeah. And
like the shit that they're talking about is, they have to really kind of make a much more interesting dodge.
It's not
in order to, instead of just being like, we're both married and
we just want to go
sexy.
down on each other on the top of this tower.
We're both sexy lesbians who just want to take a picture at the top of this. And Dan let us do it. You're cooler than Dan, right?
I am cooler than Dan.
It's like, I mean, it was a fine scene for what it was, but I don't find it as interesting to watch because that quirk isn't there.
Yeah.
And I guess you could argue that they're two very different stories, which I guess would be true. But from that point, I guess it's like, well, why do it then? Why do you send these characters back into the past unless you're going to play that fish out of water card a little bit more?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's
well,
what it is doing for me is it's not making it bad, but it is making it kind of just flat for me.
Yeah. Interestingly, I thought that the best character moment in the episode comes at the end of that, where two lesbians who need to get to the top to take a picture scene, where Seven has a line about, she is kind of a fish out of water because she's in a universe where without her Borg implants and people being scared of her as a Borg, she has a comment that I've never been around people who aren't scared of me from the get-go. And
yeah, I think her stuff is my favorite stuff in the episode, and I think that's a really interesting storyline. Hopefully, as long as they keep going with it.
Yeah, I liked that. That felt like it was just weird. It's these tonal shifts because that scene is played as a sort of silly, unfunny comedy sequence until that moment when it has the most profound character beat just as a tag on it. Mm-hmm. I think that they're too cool as well. I don't know. They don't have it just feels, to me, they don't feel like Star Trek characters in the present. It just feels like any kind of show where these normal characters, like
Yeah.
Rios
Yeah.
is kind of like a Latino house or something like that. It's there's nothing really that defines him as a Star Trek character, mostly because even in the Prime universe, in the Prime timeline, he's not particularly a Starfleet character. He's the guy chomping a cigar, too cool for school, freighter captain person.
Right. Yeah. He's more of a Star Wars character.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I do you have anything else you want to say about the 2024 or anything like that? They're taking a long time to find the Watcher. I understand that they're trying to set that stuff up, but
I fucking hate this stuff.
The Watcher or just the 2024?
Yeah, the Watcher thing.
The Watcher's soon, right?
It's got to be. Well, yeah. Well, I don't know, because I'm still convinced that Sung is going to be the person. He's going to be the if this were
the schism.
City on the Edge of Tomorrow, this Sung would be the girl there whose name I can't remember.
Is he going to have to kill the Sung to stop Data's future from existing or something?
Well,
like
I don't mean literally that's what's good, but I mean like he's the fulcrum of whatever the future is.
Sure.
So I don't know if he's gonna be the Watcher as well. Part of me, I don't know. I don't know if the Watcher ends up being another character that we already know from the past or something, like a franchise character.
Yeah,
I don't know. But like, I don't know. I just tell a fucking story. I don't know. I don't really need more mystery people that are only there so people on the internet like us can go, well, here are the reasons why the Watcher can't be Geordi.
Right. Oh, God damn it. That was going to be the whole rest of the podcast.
Well, if it turns out to be Geordi, I'm going to say call it. But you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing. That's an instance where it feels very transparent that's one of those things where it's like, we need to have a mystery character. So people go, who's the mystery character? And then they find out and they're kind of going, oh, I wish it had been a Klingon. I wish it was Martok or something.
Yeah. We talked in Discovery, I think, or no, it was Picard about the, these versions of Star Trek tend to use just sort of generic fantasy words in place of actual Star Trek-y, science-y sounding things. Like they had the Enclave of Eight or whatever it was, and the Romulan Society, and this is the Watcher.
Well, I think there's another problem to it as well, because they're talking about finding the Watcher. What the fuck does that mean?
In terms of how do they find him?
No, like what? I don't even know. Like they can't even like really pin down exactly what they're looking for, like what the event is.
No, that's what I mean. They have no clues to go on. There's nothing there.
Yeah, it's like if
the Borg
there was
Queen, I guess. Sorry to interrupt, but the Borg Queen gives them I guess that's the point of it going into the Borg Queen's mind. But at the same time, all they pulled from that was a coordinate, right? Like,
but I mean, somewhere. Like in addition to the Watcher thing, right? Like they know that they've come back because there's an event that happens that they have to stop or change or whatever. But that plot element is vague enough that to layer another vagary on top of it of the quote unquote Watcher who seems to have information about what this possible thing might possibly be.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just tough for me to give a shit because I don't really know what they're looking for, so I don't know why talking to this guy helps them. I don't know. Maybe I'm wanting too much laid out for me or something, but it feels, this whole story they're telling feels vague in a way that doesn't feel intentionally like structured.
Yeah.
It just feels vague for the sake of being vague. That's how you end up with 3 episodes that are all kind of like first steps and things they're going after in episode 4 that you're only kind of understanding what they're doing or why they're doing it.
In City on the Edge, how does Spock discover that Edith Keeler has to die? Does he do some kind of time travel to hack into the computers or something? Like,
yeah, he does.
He builds that device, right?
Yeah, he builds like a future TV or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I
can't remember exactly.
I was just thinking, comparing to that, because in City on the Edge, Spock understands what the issue is sort of immediately. It's like one of the first things that he learns about it. And in this show, when they learn that they're in a totalitarian nightmare and they have to go into the past to fix it, no one ever looks at the Wikipedia for how did this timeline come about and where do we need to go to figure that out. And it's a little bit frustrating. I mean, I guess you could argue they don't have the time or something like that. But in Star Trek, that artificialness of a character just has to type in a few things on the computer and then they learn what the information is and then they handle the problem off of that.
Yeah.
It's this hunting mystery aspect of it that causes these episodes to just string along to the point where you it's like, well, just wake me up when the episode tells us whatever episode we need to get to tell me what the problem is and how we're going to fix it. That's the one that I'm interested in getting to at this point.
Yeah, I feel like the whole setup would work better as a excuse me, as a Lower Decks joke where you push in on the Borg Queen for her big monologue where she's like, "Oh, it seems as though I have some information about a possible thing," and then Mariner goes, "Got it,"
right?
Because she just Googled it. She's like, "I just looked it up, and it says that we need to go back to this point and stop this thing from happening because this guy's going to kill this guy, and we should probably do that now. We don't need you anymore, Borg Queen. See you later."
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But that in that instance, what is common sense is not even really thought about here.
Yeah, and it's fine. It's the culmination of things. It's like it's fine if you want to do that kind of mystery stuff, but there has to be some other aspect of this series that is worth spending time in if you are frustrated by the lack of knowing where they're going. You know, like there has to be character work around Picard, or there has to be character work around the crew. I genuinely don't really like this cast of characters in the show. Mm-hmm. I think Raffi is the worst. Like, they killed Elnor because Elnor has no reason to exist in this season whatsoever. Right. Raffi doesn't make much sense to me. She is kind of a loose cannon in a way that betrays what I understand her setup to be. Rios is whatever. Seven is fairly good. Picard is kind of a feeble version of what I would expect from him to be. I just don't find them to be a particularly interesting set of characters. I think Jurati is better in this episode than she was in the second one, but at the same time, that shtick only goes so far with me in terms of performance and stuff. I don't know how you feel about these characters, but we talked in an earlier episode about someone can die in this season because there's so many tertiary characters, and I think a lot of them can die. I was actually thought that Rios could die and nothing would really matter from his death.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that they killed Elnor, only because like everything I was talking about Star Trek 4, he's the only one that you get that from because he's a fucking Romulan who doesn't know what tact is.
Right. Yeah.
You know, which you throw him into 21st century LA, he's going to get punched in the mouth at a coffee shop somewhere. Yeah. You know, as opposed to just Raffi and Seven, who are just conventionally attractive women.
Yep.
One of whom is angry, I guess, and the other one is happy, I guess. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of it. Yeah, I don't know. I think, for this kind of story, these characters are pretty bland. Yeah. And they operate too well in the 21st century. Like Raffi's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot money," and then she just mugs that guy and takes his wallet, and that's the end of that problem. Archer had to rob an ATM or whatever to get money in Carpenter Street. There's stuff that had to be done. Carpenter Street, man, really coming up in my esteem. As far as that, the more we talk about it, the more I think it's
underrated classic.
Underrated classic.
Yeah. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but we'll see where we stand in a couple episodes of this one. Anything else real? I mean, general thoughts, I guess, at this point. Or, go ahead.
I had something. One, just nerd magic xylophone question. Do they not have shields in the alternate totalitarian present?
I think they made such a great shot that they just one-shotted them for some reason.
Yeah, every single ship they blew up, it took one.
The Borg one.
When has that ever happened?
Yeah.
in the history of Star Trek.
The Borg torpedo, I understand, because they blow up some ships and then they hook the Borg Queen in, and she supercharges the torpedo and makes it green, and that was like, I understand fine. That.
Sure.
But whoever shoots the first one or two, just gets a headshot from 5,000 meters.
I didn't realize the La Sirena was the most powerful ship in the fleet in the Confederacy.
It is in this timeline. It's a good point. It's Yeah, that's kind of in line with my like warp speed is too fast for you to linger around a star for too long. So
Yeah.
I don't know how that's supposed to work. But other downside was there's a disappointing lack of Q in this. And
Yes.
I
Would you be I think I would be more entertained by this, but how would you feel if this was just Picard and Q stuck in 2024?
Yeah, it'd be much better, right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's a million times better. It has the, I don't even know if it's a criticism, but I really do feel like someone like Picard should just be like, Q, hello. Like we need to figure out what's going on. I know that he doesn't, even if he doesn't show up, I just feel like maybe Picard knows better than that and that he can't convince Q to show up or anything, but it's, I don't know.
You know what would have been great? Picard and Q, the show is Picard and Q in 2024. And because this is a Q fuckery, you can cast as many Star Trek franchise alumni to play humans in 2024 as you want. And just chalk it up to Q freaking out and fucking with Picard and Picard's mind going or something. So like the two of them, Q is like hunched over because he's feeling sick or whatever. And so Picard walks him over to apparently I think LA is full of coffee shops exclusively, because I was going to say they go to a coffee shop. And like the person that comes over to take their order is Will Wheaton or something, and it's just Picard has a glimmer of recognition, but he just kind of walks up, and then he sees somebody else who's like looks exactly like Beverly Crusher, even though in this, why is Beverly Crusher in 2024 and the president of Germany or something? You know what I mean? Like I think there's so much more fun that could be had with this.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. This kind of feels like a bit of a rehash of stuff as always. And it's not, if I had a better idea of what the story was at this point, I might be a little bit nicer to it.
Yeah. I'd agree.
But this, I mean, all this to say, I thought it was fine. Like, it's not getting me psyched about anything, but it was fine.
I agree. I thought it was fine. I liked this one better than the second episode. I don't think it's as good as the first. So
yeah, same.
My closing thoughts about where we stand at this point is that everything I liked about the first episode seems to have been largely undone now because of the way that these stories are told. Like, remember Laris?
Oh shit, yeah.
like what I liked about the first one is that it felt like they were setting up this thematic journey for Picard. And at this point, I understand that we're sort of still early in the season and things can change, but they haven't really touched on that yet. We're still in this like sci-fi setup moment of like, these are the things we're going to get to. We're going to get there next episode. Maybe Rios got caught. How about next episode? We'll push it down the road a little bit. I just wish that this show had more cohesion to its storytelling. It wasn't so interested in just jumping to the next thing, because I liked all the stuff that they were doing in the first episode. And by the time we're here at the end of the third, I've largely forgotten about a lot of it, and I don't think that's the right way to go. We're just watching, I talk about it all the time, but Amy has just had the first season of Mad Men on in the background. And it's just like, I know Mad Men's one of the greatest television shows of all time, but it's like you can track the character through the season. Like the story is like easy to follow, and you understand where it ends. And by the time you get to the end, there's like a little arc that's happened for Draper and stuff like that. And that has mystery aspects in it too. But it doesn't feel like every episode is a new bit of information to lead you down the mystery of what's happened, but it just feels more organic. And that's the most frustrating thing to me about Picard, is that it doesn't really settle into anything. And it has all of sort of the new Trek tropey flaws that I don't really care about at this point.
Yeah, agree. Imagine if they did what I said and it was just Q and Picard in the past with these other Star Trek actors showing up in different situations.
Yep.
And they get arrested and they get dragged into the precinct and they do a great, tracking shot back, pan up of the desk to see the chief of police looking down on them, and it's Ben fucking Sisko. That would be awesome.
It would be.
Or
good.
I shouldn't say Ben Sisko, it's Avery Brooks. But you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know. Obviously, what I'm talking about is just fan fiction. But it is fan fiction,
but it does It does something here that the bad version of the fan fiction in this show does, which is that there is a point to bringing the characters back, right? Like,
right.
They're a part of Picard, and if this series is going to be an exploration of that, like Picard never met Martok, you know? Like, what the fuck do I care about that? It's stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still waiting to be hooked by this.
Yeah.
And if by episode 4 you haven't, I mean, this is a Star Trek show too. If by episode 4 you haven't hooked me with a Star Trek show, then I don't really know. I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's it. Did you mention a best moment? It was just to go on a positive. My favorite moment was the Seven saying she feels happy where she is in the past. Did you have a good moment that you enjoyed from this one?
Yeah, that was my favorite part of the episode.
Oh, okay. All right.
I also did really like the back and forth with the Borg Queen.
Mm-hmm.
The two things that I'm interested in going forward are the Seven story and the Borg Queen story, because I'm honestly don't know what they're going to do with either of them. And I like the Borg Queen as a character in this situation. So
yeah. Yep. Last question, has anything shifted about who you think the Borg Queen in the first episode is? I'm not super interested in like analyzing it, but to me it's between Seven and Jurati, I think, are the two options.
Yeah, I think so. Man, at this point it's going to be really fucking depressing if it's Seven.
Yeah, although I think that I see that being more thematically fulfilling than Jurati, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, it's good. So one of the things that I was surprised at is I think they really missed an opportunity to use the totalitarian alternate present as a way to kind of move forward some of the things that the characters were thematically interested in. And maybe they did, and I'm not giving it enough credit, but like having Seven wake up and be the president, there's not really a moment where she kind of is into it. And it was like, man, This is amazing. I'm the leader of the whole Confederation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You get a little bit from Jurati where she wakes up and she's like, even in an alternate future, I'm still alone.
Yes.
But you know, I think that is an opportunity, and I guess they do it with they do it pretty much only with Picard, where I'm still not even sure what he's supposed to be, the dark mirror he's supposed to be looking in, because I don't know what exactly is he afraid of, being a evil general?
Right. Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
No.
But I think they could have done more in that. That would have made that part of the story have a little bit more weight to it if they leaned into some of that stuff a bit more. And so you're going, oh, okay, I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
There's a couple instances where you're getting what if scenarios, and a couple instances where things are better, and so your characters are actually like, well, I mean, you know, this really isn't that bad.
Yeah. I'm torn because I hate that alternate universe so much.
Oh yeah, point. Me too.
Yeah, I mean, thematically, I could see a link between waking up the president of a fascist dictatorship and being an ex-Borg are kind of, they would probably have linked memories of that. Like,
sure,
there's a kind of draw to it for Seven, potentially. But, you know, for as much as I said about it would be thematically nice if Seven becomes the queen at the start, just as a kind of like sacrifice thing, I don't think the show is going to earn that by that point, because it's not really particularly interested in stuff like examining how Seven would feel about being the leader of a collective dictatorship over people, you know?
Yeah.
So if they'd focused on that, I think that it's deserving and it would be very emotional and satisfying and cathartic or whatever. But I'm not sure. I think they'll focus on the flash or the sizzle rather than the steak or whatever that saying is.
The reason I'm going Agnes versus Seven is because they did it with Seven last season.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Unless they use that as an excuse as to like why they would do it again, but I don't know. And I just, man, making Seven the Borg Queen, it just feels like someone who's escaped an abusive relationship ultimately going back with their abusive boyfriend or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can see it for the greater good. The greater, if it's done for the greater good, I can kind of understand it. But it would be
staying
a
together
tragedy.
for the kids. Staying together for the kids is never the way to go.
They can have separate bedrooms and they'll be fine. I guess we're done with Assimilation. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for supporting the show on Patreon. You guys are the best. You are much better than the first 3 episodes of Star Trek Picard at this point. Although I'm not hating this one as much. I don't know. It's just not very good is the thing.
No, I don't
It doesn't
hate
offend me like Discovery did. It could maybe down the line, but I feel that this is definitely a better show than Discovery. It just has so many of the same problems in it at the same time.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's a problem that unfortunately runs through both of these shows, and as much as I'm looking forward to Strange New Worlds, it does make me worry that it's going to be the same thing.
It's going to be the same thing. Yep.
Quick. I'm only because I'm seeing this right now.
Yeah.
Quick shout out to Tariq Latif, one of our listeners. He posted on the Discord saying, "I don't know what this says about the episode, but around 15 minutes after I finished watching it, my appendix burst, and I'm currently in hospital for the night." So hope you get well there.
Yeah,
man.
get well. Amy had her. Yeah, I don't mean to laugh. That is I guess he's fine enough to be posting on Discord unless he doesn't have much else to do before they'd read him his last rites. But Amy had her appendix out. Did you ever have your appendix out?
No. It's one of those things that I was always terrified of as a child, because once I was told how it can happen, where it's like, oh yeah, like a little piece of something that's going through your intestines could get caught in there and gets inflamed. It made me super terrified to make sure that I never had eggshells in my eggs when I made them, because that was, I think, that was the example my mother used, I think, when she was explaining to me how that happens.
How it happens, sure.
And so it always, anytime I feel like a twinge of pain in my lower right side of my abdomen, I'm like Red Fox going, here it is.
It's coming.
The big one.
Yeah, I have my tonsils. I have my adenoids, I think is how you pronounce it.
Oh, wow.
I have my appendix. I never had any of that stuff taken out.
Oh, I thought you were saying you had all those taken out.
No, I still have them.
You're just a hollowed out canoe.
No, that's like
over there.
That's I think everyone in Britain in 1950 had it done. Like Roald Dahl had all that stuff done from his autobiography. I remember that. I think it was just popular surgery to do back then. What the hell was I going to say? Well, get well anyway, Tark. I'm sorry to hear that your appendix burst, and I don't know if it has anything to do with Picard, but you do say that you kind of enjoyed it, despite its many flaws. so say we all, I suppose, as they say in Battlestar. We're done. We'll be back next week with the next episode of Star Trek Picard. I don't think it has an episode title yet, so I can't tell you. But thanks again, everybody, for listening. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
Thanks for checking out the Rotten Horror Picture Show coverage of the Stephen Kinger Second Stringers, and also the few Batman things we have going up the next couple months.
Yeah,
we appreciate everybody who listens in.
Yeah, I wonder if any of the Batman people actually are going to listen to the Star Trek Picard. It seems a hard schism between those two groups, but everyone is welcome. It's a big umbrella. Unlike America, where you get the fuck out. Rios.
2024, baby. Harsh realities of 2024. It's not that far away, guys.
I don't know. They're definitely going to bring up, they'll be like, well, it all started in 2022 when the Republicans won back the House and the Senate. And it's like, oh my God, my eyes are going to roll back in my head and be like.
So I was under the impression, I had to look this up. I had thought, here's something that I do want to, maybe we can talk about this more in the next episode because we are about to end here. But
sure.
I thought more had happened in the 21st century by this point, going by traditional canon.
Star Trek history.
Yeah. Are we not past the eugenics war at this point?
We are. So the 90s would have been the eugenics war, and World War III is like right around the corner.
Yeah, I gotta say, man,
things look good.
Bounce back from that eugenics war.
LA never looked better. Although maybe our own history is the tent city camps are just eugenics war survivors or something, and I'm just not paying attention.
When they went to the tent city thing, I actually thought that's what the way they were going. I thought they were going more for like the that Deep Space Nine episode.
Yeah,
but then they start panning around, and it's like people walking around in sunglasses and modern buildings and shit. And I was like, all right, maybe this is just supposed to be like a tent city you would find in L.A. in 2021 or 2022.
Yeah.
If those exist, I don't even know if those are in L.A.
Oh, they definitely are. I read a good book about that called San Francisco, which was fascinating about the tent cities that are popping up everywhere. Because Boston has them, Methadone Mile. They're trying to get rid of them.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's it. So we'll see if Star Trek Picard delves into the complicated politics of 2022. Probably not. I imagine Q is going to come back and say some stuff, and then we'll maybe discover who the Watcher is. Very final last question, Clay. I know I've said that 1,000 times, but you can just answer quickly. Does Adam Soong mean to do whatever he does?
Ooh, good question.
Is he a bad guy intentionally, or is he doing something that is going to somehow cause a bad thing to happen?
I'm wondering if he's... Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Because I was going to say, it feels like he might be an unintentional... Like he means to do the thing.
Right, but has unintended
be,
side effects.
Yeah, like he's about to invent Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Bringing back MySpace.
I don't know. I don't know if they're going to go full evil with him. I have a feeling probably not. But
he does have a statue. You know?
It's true.
There seems to be intent if there's a statue. We don't honor people who make mistakes with statues. Unless they're
I don't know.
Confederate generals, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But it's
Tell
a
that to
Confederacy.
Stonewall Jackson.
It is a Confederacy. Well, I guess I'll recall that. But I think he's going to have some kind of intent to him, I would think. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time.